Good morning and welcome to the Red and Ed Show, where it's always morning, even in the afternoon. I'm your host, Jay Edgar, and it appears right now that I'm going to be flying solo again for the night here because I have no co-host and have not found out about why until the last second here, but unfortunately, the news never stops for anybody, and we are shifting into high gear right now. We are getting right down to the wire of what we need to get through, what we need to talk about, and what's going to be happening in the next 2 weeks here. And of course, it's not going to stop after 2 weeks because I predict a very, very, very chaotic transition period no matter who wins. Between November and January, it's going to be even more hell than what we're seeing right now. But my lovely co-host will be off the campaign trail by that point at that time, so we will be facing a different set of hurdles on that there. I do have an invite out to a friend of mine to see if he can possibly pop in over to the other side of the screen in just a second here. I've not had a response back, and I do need to get the news going here. We were already running 3 minutes late here, but we do what we've got to do over here. So let's get the intro music up out of here, and I think it's time for us to get up into the news here and figure out what we've got going on this week here. I'm going to get the live chat up here. Hopefully we'll get some people in here talking and conversing and seeing what's going on with that on that. But we've got a full show to get to today. There were a pair of town halls that went on this week, running right at the same time with each other. Joe Biden and Donald Trump both running at the exact same time. So we'll talk a bit about what happened with the two of them, what the difference was between the two of them, what this could mean going forward, and what this could mean for the debate that's upcoming. Amy Coney Barrett faced down the Senate Judiciary Committee this past week, and it came with all of the fun and all of the hell that you would expect. I was actually just a little bit disappointed this week because of what they did there, because I thought that for sure it was going to be a lot more bloody, a lot more violent, and a lot more hateful than what we actually saw through the Kavanaugh hearing. And even worse, because this was the woman who was supposed to be replacing the vaunted and wonderful Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So we'll talk a bit about what happened there. I've got some video clip to share with that as well. Hunter Biden has come into a little bit of trouble at this point. Hunter Biden he dropped a laptop off mysteriously in Delaware. The owner copied the hard drive and then sent it off to the FBI. After no response, he sent it off to Rudolph Giuliani, who leaked it to the New York Post, and all kinds of hell broke loose from that. So we'll talk a bit about what happened there. And to round out the day, I do have some surprise stupidity for the audience because I don't have a co-host over here. So we'll look into that and we'll see what's stupid. And that one is actually pretty well breaking just before I started doing the show prep for this. So this will be an interesting one. This will be one to see and one to go along with. It's going to be all of that and more over on the Red and Ed Show. Thanks for checking us out live on YouTube, DLive, Twitch, Periscope, and Facebook. And if you're over on Facebook, head on over into one of the links above you for the YouTube, the Twitch, or the DLive, because we want to get you into that live chat. We want to get you chatting, and we want to talk with you here. Especially if I'm going to wind up flying solo throughout this entire show here. I do want to talk with you guys over on the live chat, so come on in and hang out with us, check us out, and ask your questions along with the topics, I guess. And if you can't catch us on any of those other platforms, you can catch us back on demand over on YouTube and over on BitChute.com, or you can find archives over on FreedomScoop.com. FreedomScoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. Come and check us out and check out great shows like The Generational Gap, the Daily Ignoramus, the R-Rated Conservative, the Breakdown with Birkenhoff, and the Freckles and Brit Show. We carry all of them, and we carry plenty of swag, so come and pick up some of our swag and help us support great creators. All right. Got just a little bit of house cleaning going on here through the week. First off, this one was just breaking this morning. The New York Post, which of course has fallen into a little bit of non-credibility throughout the week, and we'll talk a bit about that with the Hunter Biden hearings. But the New York Post broke a story this morning because last night a man was climbing down the side of the Trump Tower in Chicago, hanging off of it, and shouting out demands that he wants to have an audience with the president. What he wanted to talk about, or even his name, none of them were released to any of this, so we don't know what was going on with any of this, but he was up there shouting and screaming, and that was the end of that. The New York Post writes, an alleged member of the Black Lives Matter movement was dangling from a rope off Chicago's Trump Tower Sunday night, demanding to speak to the president and the media, the report said. The unidentified man, who appeared to be in his 20s, was seen hanging off the side of the riverfront skyscraper at 5:30 p.m. local time, remaining there for hours as police negotiators tried to talk him to safety, the Chicago Sun-Times reported. Police told the newspaper that the man threatened suicide and voiced a desire to speak with Trump and the media. The interesting part of this article, and I read about this, I read all the way down to the bottom on this one on Contemporary this morning, but the interesting part of this article was that this man said, everyone knows me. They know I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm a well-educated guy, but Mr. Trump, if you think I'm crazy, I'm not crazy. And if you will not talk with me, I will cut, I will die. Yeah, that definitely sounds like something that a sane person would say. So, no new details have arisen in this story yet. No name, no identity has. This was just breaking last night. So, yeah, dude's not crazy, I guess. All right. On other news here, Nancy Pelosi has given Trump 48 hours to compromise on a coronavirus deal. As of right now, there has been no compromise that has shown up yet. That is something that could be happening down in the works. But yeah, she came out last night and says, if you want to have a stimulus package before the election, then you have 48 hours to come to it. Otherwise, we're not going to touch it until after the election. Now, a lot of people have come out to Nancy Pelosi, especially on her side of the aisle, and have demanded and begged that she take Trump's deal because, it's looking bad for a lot of the people in the House. And a lot of Americans, when polled, have come out and spoken the fact that they believe that Nancy Pelosi is the one who is at fault for holding up the stimulus to the people. They're not blaming Trump for this, or at least in the majority they're not blaming Trump. They are blaming Nancy Pelosi for holding it up. And the Democrats in the House are running out yelling, take the deal, please take the deal. Because we have to go back and face our constituents and tell them why they're not getting a stimulus check. Now, as most people know, I'm not really in the market of people getting a stimulus check because I think it'll be a lot more effective if the government gets the hell out of the way and lets the people do what the people do, but you know, the government does still need to take credit for what they did. As Shapiro likes to say, which is ironic because I'm reading this from the Daily Wire, as Shapiro likes to say, what happened here is the government drove an F-150 through your house, and now they're responsible for paying for it. Unfortunately, the government does not create anything, so they're responsible for paying for that damage with our own money. Let's keep going. From the Blaze. Nursing home residents stage a heartbreaking protest outside facility, rather die from COVID than loneliness. From Sarah Taylor. This was a little bit of an odd story. Happened about the middle of the week last week where a bunch of nursing home residents just sat outside with signs and said, please just open it back up. Let us see our children. We're dying in here alone and we can't talk to anybody. It breaks your heart to see, but that has been one of the consequences of COVID right now, is the fact that people aren't seeing their families. They can't, obviously you can't send kids into the nursing homes that have COVID, and we saw Cuomo do that and kill a bunch of the grandparents, but the states that did take the precautions and the families that took the precautions just have these people in the nursing homes sitting there, concerned, wondering what's happening in the outside world, and not having any interaction with their families who they love. So, our hearts go out to the protesters. May your families get the chance to come in and see you again after all of this blows over, which I do fear I can predict will happen on November 4th. All right, I got another one here that came from the Blaze. An 11-year-old stole a school bus this past week and flipped off the police during a high-speed chase in Louisiana, police say. Now, as I mentioned on the other show, this could not have been that high speed of a chase because school buses are generally, well, this was an older one too, though, you have to keep in mind, and I pointed that out on Contemporary, but school buses are generally governed at 65 miles an hour. So they can't go any faster than that. So I don't know. Well, I mean, in town, that's still a pretty high-speed chase. But all things considered, when you hear high-speed chase, you're talking maybe 100 plus, 90 plus, 100 plus chases with the police going after you. And a school bus just isn't going to go that fast. I don't know what it was that the police intended to do when they were chasing the school bus down, because I can't imagine a pit maneuver from a Ford Explorer does a whole lot to a 15,000-pound international school bus. So that happened this week. In other news, Gretchen Whitmer, who said that Trump's dangerous tweets incited the mysterious attack that happened to her this past week, where there was an attempted kidnapping and she doesn't know how she made it out of it alive, and all of the people who she tried to tie to Trump were involved and got arrested, and even more people were getting arrested through this. But according to the Daily Wire, while she was giving her interview, she had a mysterious picture in the background, and one of the tweets from the Trump War Room actually pointed this out on Meet the Depressed. She had a small plaque underneath the plant that said 8645. Apparently, and this is just some numerology stuff that I can't even begin to understand how much Whitmer derangement syndrome had to go into this. Now, I'm one who will call out Trump derangement syndrome where it is, because we see a lot of that there, but for somebody to look this close at a still from Meet the Depressed while Whitmer on, I mean, there are women out there, or men, if that's your thing. There's ice cream. You could bake bread. But for you to sit down and analyze this closely, and the thing is tiny too. I mean, you could barely see it in the picture. And I think for most people looking at this picture, I should have actually brought this up and put it up on the screen. But for most people looking at this picture, you would have never noticed this. But of course, somebody went through there, found the little plaque that says 8645. And now have brought up the fact that Whitmer is more than likely trying to incite violence against the president. 86, for those of you who don't know, can be shorthand for killing somebody. So that's what happened there, which I thought was one of the craziest stories I heard. And this was also breaking over the weekend. All right, what else do we have going on in here? Kyle Rittenhouse will not face gun charges in Illinois. Now, he is still facing all of the other charges with the state of Wisconsin and the city of Kenosha, but the state of Illinois has determined through investigation that the firearm that Rittenhouse used on that fateful night all the way back a month ago, 2 months ago already, I'm sorry, was it? Everything is run so far together, I can't even remember when it was that I went at this point. But everything that happened those fateful nights with the firearm that he was possessing, there were charges that were possibly pending in Illinois for whether or not he was legally or illegally carrying a firearm. Those charges have been dropped. It has been determined through investigation that the firearm was purchased and stored and possessed in the state of Wisconsin, not in the state of Illinois. Rittenhouse never possessed the firearm in Illinois. Now, he may have possessed other arms in the state of Illinois. I know that the famous picture of him circling around carrying an AR-style rifle while wearing Crocs, I don't know where that was taken. I do think I know where that was taken. And if that is correct, if I'm correct, that is in Wisconsin. I think I know where that was. But yes, it is very possible that that could have also been possessed in Illinois. But the particular arm that he used that night was never possessed in the state of Illinois. So he will not be facing charges from the state of Illinois. Extradition still awaiting as he moves along and as things move along between Lake County and Kenosha County. All right. Another one here. Biden considering controversial New York Governor Cuomo as an AG. I don't even have to go into that one. How Swiss cheese does your brain have to be to come out and say, hey, you know what, man? You know, that guy Cuomo, he's a swell guy. And New York did so well in the pandemic. Let's get him up on here. The northeast corner of this country sometimes just astounds me with the way that they do things. And I enjoy the northeast corner of this country. I really do. I lived there for a couple years. I enjoy the place. I enjoy a lot of the people out there. I'd like to go back out there and visit again. Hopefully while the already conservative still lives there, but I know that he's getting ready to pack up his bags and leave on a jet plane, so we won't see that. But yes, Cuomo as the Attorney General. What could possibly go wrong? Right, and from the Daily Wire, enrollment rate for college freshmen drops by double digits. That's right, folks. People aren't going to college anymore because people are starting to realize, go to a trade, a lot of your employers will train you on the spot. And people are starting to realize that these jobs are out there. They don't need college for. They need to go and fill some of the jobs. And some of the jobs these kids are getting are paying better than what some of us are making at this point. Not to mention, and this has been the biggest thing, this has been how I formed this channel, how I learned how to video edit, how I learned how to audio edit, how I learned how to play the freaking guitar, how I've learned how to program, how I've learned to do almost anything that I've used as a useful skill at this point, other than car repair. Well, even I taught myself that too, because the school that I went to was so utterly worthless that they were trying to dumb it down so they could get more and more kids to graduate, because it was a for-profit school. But for the most part, any skill that you need right now, you have a device in your pocket at all times that will give you any piece of information in the world in a matter of seconds, anywhere in the world. You can be anywhere out there and say, I don't know, how do I carve a train whistle after I've cut down a tree? And I bet you there's a YouTube video for that you can pick up in some of the most remote areas of this country. So people are starting to realize that, and I think a lot of this lockdown kind of did that too, as people sat back. Now, and that could be another thing that goes along with this, is that the lockdown could be affecting people and could be one of the big reasons that people aren't going to college anymore, because they don't want to be around other people, maybe taking a year or a semester off, because they don't know what's going to happen with the COVID. And if they go to college and enroll for college, they might just get sent home and have to pay an exorbitant amount of money to sit in their home and watch a Zoom meeting. There's that possibility too. And like we said, when Harvard said they weren't going to lower their prices and not have in-person classes, that was the most expensive subscription service there was to have a Harvard Zoom meeting pumped into your house for $100,000 a year, whatever the hell it costs to go to Harvard at this point. So people are starting to realize that, and hopefully this puts a big dent in the college machine of pumping out leftists over and over and over again. All right, I'm going to check in with a live chat here. It does not look like I have any, but any guest that's going to be coming up again. Yeah, Saint just mentioned that too. Alone again, I see. Let's see, Ron Helton's got the sticker party up there. How dare you? And the AOC, Harvey McLeod says Louisiana. That sounds like Florida. Saint says alone again. Yeah. I don't know what happened there. I put the link out and I went out to try and see if another friend of mine could pop in, and nobody did. I didn't try and get on Discord because, I mean, with as slow as this computer is at this point, I do have to conserve resources. So I'd already shut Discord down. Otherwise, I probably would have put out a message to like John or something. I know that he could probably pop on in a moment's notice here. Actually, if somebody wants to get a message over to John here quick, you could do that. I could possibly send him something over on the Twitter and at least salvage the rest of the show here. Saint also says, good evening, bitches, with his standard greeting, of course. And the breakdown with Birkenhoff, Wyatt Birkenhoff from over on the Freedom Scoop Media Group, says yo to me and hopefully to everybody else, because everybody whose name I see in the chat so far, they're all cool people. and I'd hang out with any of them in a second. All right, we've got some stuff to talk about here, and I do want to have a look and see what we've got going on here. I got one more chat message coming in, probably making fun of me. LMAO at your background, libertarian women barely exist and they're usually autistic and fugly. Charming. The woman who usually sits on the other side of the screen is not autistic and not fugly. I can say that. And with the campaign trail on, also sometimes cannot make it because of meetings. 2 more weeks, people, and we'll be back onto the regular schedule. All right. Let's talk about the Amy Coney Barrett hearings, because that was, I think, the dominant news cycle throughout the week here. At least it was dominant in my world here, because I actually listened to almost the entire things going on as we went along. I sat back with my headphones at work and listened to 8 hours of the 11 that they did on Tuesday. I listened to 5 hours of what they did on Wednesday, and I listened to, I believe, the entirety of what they did on Thursday, and my God, what a mess. You've never seen... I mean, that was one of the big things that came out of this was the fact, and I'll talk about this just a little bit later, but one of the big things that came off of this that just stuck in my mind right from the top and right from the beginning was the fact that they were not having a hearing on Amy Coney Barrett. At least the Democrats weren't. The Republicans, who were just out there fawning all over her at this point, were having a hearing for Amy Coney Barrett, but the Democrats out there, I think, were having a hearing for Donald Trump. That's the only way that I can come up with this, because that's all that they were talking about was Donald Trump and what he wanted to do, and the dark money and everything else that went along with that. But I mean, the fireworks started even before we got into any of the hearings here. Ilhan Omar started out the fireworks with this even before we went into this. And I've got to give it to Ilhan Omar on this one. A broken clock is right twice a day. So she actually did manage to come up with something that was somewhat intelligent off of this. And I mean, I voted Republican for a couple years, for a couple cycles, I should say. I'm not going to vote Republican this year. Well, because I'm not going to vote party this year. I'm going to be voting for the individual people on there. But I am definitely not voting for anybody on the top of the ticket this year. There's no way. I look at the Republicans, the Democrats, the Greens, and the Libertarians. I can't right now. I cannot do it this year. But Ilhan Omar is quite right in this statement that she put out here. Reading from Newsweek, Ilhan Omar says Republicans would lose their mind if a Muslim woman were nominated to the SCOTUS. Well, a broken clock is right twice a day, and there's something definitely there for that one. Ilhan Omar is correct. If they were trying to nominate a Muslim woman, if for whatever reason this was a Hillary pick, and Schumer had the Senate, and they were trying to jam through a Muslim woman who was probably wearing a hijab at the time, or whatever the hell the headdress is that Ilhan Omar regularly wears, then I'm telling you right now, McConnell, Cruz, Hawley, and all the rest of the big players that were on the other side would be 100% losing their mind over this and doing everything that they could in their power to try and stop this, to try and keep this from going through, to try and dig up anything that they could on this woman. And, of course, their side of the media would not be any less complicit with it. The Daily Wire, The Blaze, Fox News. Well, if Fox News at the time decided that they wanted to be on the Republican side, they're kind of hit or miss lately at this point. But if they decided that they wanted to be on the Republican side again, Fox News would even be out there trying to find every last piece of dirt on this woman, if a Muslim woman were sitting in Amy Coney Barrett's spot right now. So, absolutely, yes. I'll give credit where credit is due. And, I call balls and strikes with all these people. Ilhan Omar absolutely is right. If this was a Muslim woman, they would be going nuts. They would be screaming to the top of the heavens. They would be screeching about everything if they were trying to put a Muslim woman up at this point. So, good on her. But they are not trying to put a Muslim woman up at this point. They are trying to put up Amy Coney Barrett. And some of the speeches that went off of this, and like I pointed out, a lot of this wasn't necessarily going out trying to get onto Amy Coney Barrett's records. In fact, for the most part, anything that came out from Amy Coney Barrett's record was largely ignored, even by the Democrats at this point. I believe it was Sheldon Whitehouse again on the second day did try to, no, it was Dick Durbin, I'm sorry, tried to stop the hearings because of some speech dates at Notre Dame that were mysteriously left off of Barrett's calendar. They were trying to delay the vote for that. But, of course, Lindsey Graham didn't let that go anywhere. And we will be seeing a vote coming up later on this week. But that didn't stop the rest of them from coming up and trying to tie Amy Coney Barrett to whatever fringe conspiracy kind of thing that they did. And Sheldon Whitehouse just, I mean, he had this bizarre speech that I don't even know what to make of all of this. One of the things that I said when I was talking about this was, I do believe that Senator Whitehouse has got bulletin boards upon bulletin boards in his office, left and right, with push pins everywhere and red yarn connecting everything. It's got to look like the Data and Society report that came out last year that mysteriously did not include Matt Christensen. That's what it's got to look like in that dude's office, just red yarn everywhere connecting everything off this. And he never asked a question in this speech. I cut a little bit out of this so you guys can listen to what it was that he had to say. Let's get that one up here. And let's have a listen to what Senator Whitehouse from Rhode Island had to say from this.
I guess the reason that I want to do this is because people who are watching this need to understand that this small hearing room and the little TV box that you're looking at, the little screen that you're looking at, are a little bit like the frame of a puppet theater. And if you only look at what's going on in the puppet theater, you're not going to understand the whole story. You're not going to understand the real dynamic of what is going on here. And you're certainly not going to understand forces outside of this room who are pulling strings and pushing sticks and causing the puppet theater to react. We have colleagues here who supported you, this nominee, before there was a nominee. That's a little unusual. We have some very awkward 180s from colleagues. Mr. Chairman, you figure in this. Our leader said back when it was Garland versus Gorsuch that of course, the American people should have a say in the court's direction. Of course, said Mitch McConnell. And if you're one of the millions and millions of Americans who...
So I want to pause that right there. I want to point something out at the point that he's at this point. And for the most part, actually, everything that Senator Whitehouse has said up to that point was actually accurate in something that we should be brought up to the table. Something we definitely should be bringing up to the table off of this. There is something going on with that. Yes, McConnell is a hypocrite because he came out and said, well, we're not going to confirm Merrick Garland because, the people should have a say and it's coming in an election year. And now he's up there and said, well, let's get this through as fast as we can because we need to get somebody up on the Supreme Court. And now he's coming up and trying to make excuses for why he didn't want to do that, or why he didn't want to do it for Garland, but now he wants to do it now. If he just came out and said, you know what? I just want to win, and I'm going to win whatever way possible that I can win. I think a lot of people would have a lot more respect for him, and we wouldn't be talking about the hypocrisy. Well, some people would still be talking about the hypocrisy, but yeah, absolutely, there is something to be held to account for McConnell jamming this through. Now, I hope he does get it through. I think, and it was said during the hearings, under any other normal circumstances, Amy Coney Barrett has an incredible judicial record. She's calm, she's collected, she was able to take questions very easily fielding questions from her detractors throughout the rest of the day. If this was normal times in our government, if we weren't so balkanized right now, I really think that Barrett could easily match the majority that Ginsburg got to get up on the court. We could see a 93, 94, 95 vote. Or even, you remember when we used to have unanimous votes for Supreme Court justices. That was definitely a time ago. But we could see these 80 and 90 vote confirmations for these justices. But right now, we're just too polarized in this country to do that. Let's finish up, because this is where it got bizarre in this video.
Depend on the Affordable Care Act, you've got a stake. It's not just the platform over and over again. Let's start by talking about the Affordable Care Act. Here's the president talking about this litigation that we're gearing up this nominee for November 10th. In this litigation, he said, we want to terminate health care under Obamacare. That is the president's statement. So when we react to that, don't act as if we're making this stuff up. This is what President Trump said. This is what your party platform says. Reverse the Obamacare cases. Senator after senator, including many in this committee, filed briefs saying that the Affordable Care Act should be thrown out by courts. Why is it surprising for us to be concerned that you want this nominee to do what you want nominees to do? One quick stop on NFIB v. Sebelius, because a lot of this has to do with money. This is an interesting comparison. National Federation of Independent Businesses, until it filed the NFIB versus Sebelius case, had its biggest donation ever of $21,000. In the year that it went to work on the Affordable Care Act, 10 wealthy donors gave $10 million. Somebody deserves a thank you.
And that's what we saw with that. And he went on bizarrely after that that was the sanest portion of the conversation, but it set the theme for everything else that he went on to do for the rest of, that was 20 minutes. He never asked a question throughout any of it. He just went on for 20 minutes and talked about where the money came from, who donated what, who was connected where. And like I said, it was a bizarre situation where you almost wanted to look in his office and see if he had bulletin boards scattered throughout the room with red yarn everywhere. It was quite bizarre. All right. There was more that went on with this, though, and we've got some more video to walk with this. Kamala Harris was first to get up there, and, it's Kamala Harris. You knew what she was going to do. It's what she did with the Kavanaugh hearing. Kamala Harris was right up there to make a campaign speech, because that's what Kamala Harris does, is make campaign speeches. I know that during the Brett Kavanaugh, when she was nominated for the vice presidential pick, hell, when she was going through the debates for the primaries, that's what people were digging up for advertising material right at that point, was what what Kamala Harris said while she was grilling Brett Kavanaugh as she was having her Yas Queen Slay moment. I'm sorry. I got my SL and my U mixed up on that one. Yeah, she was having her Slay Queen moment off all this, and that's what they were digging up. And, of course, she doesn't disappoint either on this one. I actually took this tweet video from somebody who was in great support of the good senator from California, but still it kind of shows a little bit of the fact that this wasn't necessarily a confirmation hearing that she was trying to do. She was just trying to cut up another campaign ad. Let's have a listen to what that sounded like. There it goes.
More forthcoming. At her today, you have quoted Justice Ginsburg's testimony about not making predictions in future cases. However, she was far more forthcoming at her confirmation hearing about the essential rights of women. In 1993, Justice Ginsburg's confirmation hearing shows that she testified that, quote, the decision whether or not to bear a child is central to a woman's life, to her well-being and dignity. It is a decision she must make for herself. When government controls that decision, for her, she is being treated as less than a fully adult human responsible for her own choices. Then Judge Ginsburg went on to say, quote, it is essential to women's equality with man that she be the decision maker, that her choice be controlling. If you impose restraints that impede her choice, you are disadvantaging her because of her sex, unquote. Now, Justice Ginsburg did not tell the committee how she would vote in any particular case, but she did freely discuss how she viewed a woman's right to choose. But Judge Barrett, your record clearly shows you hold a different view. In 2006, you signed your name to an advertisement published in the South Bend Tribune. It described Roe v. Wade as, quote, an exercise of raw judicial power, and called for putting, quote, an end to the barbaric legacy of Roe v. Wade. You signed a similar ad in 2013 that described Roe as, quote, infamous, and expressed opposition to abortion. Also in 2013, you wrote an article about Supreme Court precedent in which you excluded Roe from a list of well-settled cases that you said, quote, no justice would overrule even if she disagrees, suggesting, of course, that you believe Roe is susceptible to being overturned.
Yeah, and I understand that. I understand everything that Harris said with that, but the reality is, at this point in this country, it would take an act of God, literally, to get a case involving Roe up to the Supreme Court. Every single appeals court below would be smacking that thing down left and right. And even if it did get up there, it would take years. I don't even know what a case to overturn Roe versus Wade would look like at this point. It's not like Barrett and Kavanaugh and Gorsuch can all come together and sit in the back corner of a room and say, you know what? You know what we should do today? We should just come up and overturn Roe versus Wade, and it's over. No, there are things that have to come through there. It does have to come up. Somebody has to appeal to the Supreme Court to get there. And honestly, in the way that this country is right now, especially with the makeup of the circuit courts, I don't see it getting there. I really don't. Now, of course, one of the falsehoods that they've been trying to push with this hearing is the fact that the Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade automatically makes abortion 100% illegal in this country. That is not the case. That has never been the case. At that point, it kicks back down to the states, and, I mean, New York and California, they're not going to let any of that stuff go. Wyoming probably will make it illegal on a legislative basis. And they won't depend on the court to do it. They'll actually sit down with the legislature and do it. And furthermore, if the left in this country really did want to codify this, instead of depending on the Supreme Court, they would pass this through the legislature, where it belonged in the first place. But the narrative has always been that, oh, well, no, if we get the conservative Supreme Court, it's going to be the end of Roe. That's been the thing that they've been preaching as long as I've been alive. But good on Harris for finding a free way to come out and cut a campaign ad. Mazie Hirono had an odd exchange with this. Now, it is standard practice. I will confess to this, but it's so odd to hear it coming from one woman to another woman. So Hirono got up on the stand and initially asked a couple of questions that she says that she has to ask standard practice for everybody. And okay, I understand asking these questions. It's just, I think a lot of people on the right got a little bit way too bent out of shape over the fact that these questions were asked. It is standard practice, but it's still awkward to hear. Hirono got up and said, "Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made any unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any physical or verbal harassment or assault of a sexual nature?" Hirono asked Barrett. "No, Senator Hirono," Barrett replied. Hirono then asked Barrett, "Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?" Barrett again said no. Now, with the records that are coming out, I don't know necessarily why questions like this needed to be asked on the floor. I mean, they've got the documentation, they've got all the documentation of everything that Judge Barrett has done in her career and in her professional life. I'm sure the FBI wasted no time getting all of that there. So it is very odd to actually have that question asked on the Senate floor. But once again, they call it standard practice, and if that's standard practice, then that's just what it is. I know a lot of people over on the right side of the aisle were running out, frothing at the mouth, saying, "Well, they were just trying to pull the Kavanaugh back over again, and they were trying to attach Senator Judge Barrett's name with sexual harassment. It's evil. It's evil. It's evil." I don't know about any of that. I know that these were same questions that were asked of Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Gorsuch. These questions were asked of both of these men. So apparently it is a standard practice. It seems awkward to me. All right. One of Judge Barrett's students from Notre Dame came in and gave a very, very heartwarming testimony of what it was like to work under Judge Barrett. Did I bring this up? I didn't bring this up. All right, well, I guess I'm going to have to paraphrase that one. So, one of Judge Barrett's students was blind upon entering. She had a laptop that was specially designed to work for her and to help her get through her classes. She had this from her undergraduate days in college. The laptop was on its last leg when she got to Notre Dame. She didn't have any sort of other equipment to help facilitate her needs at the school. And she went to Judge Barrett and said, "Okay, well, I have this problem here. What do I do?" And Judge Barrett allegedly said to her that this is no longer your problem. I will take care of this. Now, the juxtaposition of this I can appreciate because I know that there were a lot of other situations where a lot of people angry the fact that Barrett was getting up for the nomination were coming up and saying how horrible she was or how horrible it was that she was going up because of her views on the ACA and on various things like Roe versus Wade. They were saying it was horrible about the fact that she was getting up there and was possibly going to be ruling on there. There is an ACA case that is coming before the court on November 10th. That is something that we are going to have to face down as we go along, as we look through this. And it was a nice balance, I think, to see a personal anecdote about how Barrett was kind and sentimental and was there willing to help people. Unfortunately, I also don't believe that it really had any bearing on the case. Honestly, I think it's actually a little bit condemning, to be completely honest with it. Yes, it makes Judge Barrett look very good, in a very good light. It makes her look like she's out there willing to help her community, but it also shows that she's willing to show favoritism if the situations deserve it, and a justice needs to be completely impartial. So there is a give and take to go along with this. Like I said, it was a nice backdrop to go against what everybody else who was getting up on the fourth day of hearings had to say about her, but even still, I think it was almost unnecessary to see. A lot of this testimony, and I mentioned over at the top of the topic, it seemed like they weren't having a hearing for Barrett. It seems like they were almost having a hearing for Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself, maybe a memorial service for Ginsburg, or even to try and have a hearing on Trump, because that was something that was brought up a lot throughout all the questioning that did happen through this was, well, this is what Trump wants. This is what Trump wants. Are you going to do what Trump wants? This is what Trump has said that he wanted. And we saw a lot of that in the White House presentation. He mentioned Trump a lot through that. In fact, I was listening to that and I said out loud, even though I was listening through the headphones, I said, "Are you going to ask a question, Senator? Are you going to ask her something?" But that seemed to be what the focus was, is what President Trump wanted out of all of this, and not the judicial history and the judicial philosophy of Amy Coney Barrett. So that was something that, I thought it was absolutely awkward to focus on, instead of actually asking the woman how she's going. And looking through some of her cases, we didn't see a lot of her caseload. There were a couple of them here and there where they brought up cases that she had tried and judged on in the Seventh Circuit. But, she hasn't really been in the Seventh Circuit that long either. The majority of the material that they actually had on her had to do with articles she's written, as we heard from Senator Harris, or the anecdote of her trying to help out her students while she was over at Notre Dame. So I can understand to an extent why the focus was on Trump, but Trump wasn't the one at the hearing. He was out giving a rally speech somewhere, which pissed a lot of other people off. But the last thing that really, and this is kind of pointing out where we're starting to balkanize at this. Now, one thing that's been pointed out numerous times over and over again was the fact that, you look at wrestlers. The already conservative uses this anecdote a lot. It's the wrestling theory that's what politics has become, is what wrestling used to be back in the day. These people get out on the stage and they're bitter and they hate each other. And then they go off into the same shower room and smack each other's asses. And it's kind of the same with politicians in general. They go out, they give their grandstanding speeches, and then they go off to the same bars and drink together and have a good time. Well, Senator Feinstein got up at the very end of the hearings on the last day, on Thursday, and gave a hug to Chairman Graham, who was presiding over the hearings. And that set a lot of people off. There were calls for Feinstein to resign as soon as she did this. I want to read just a little bit from the Washington Post. As a contentious week of confirmation hearings for the Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett wrapped up on Thursday, the top Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee had little to offer but praise. This has been one of the best set of hearings I've participated in, said Senator Dianne Feinstein. It leaves one with a lot of hopes, a lot of questions, and even some ideas, perhaps, of good bipartisan legislation that we can put together. If that wasn't enough to anger Democrats who have spent this week trying to paint Barrett's nomination process as a sham, Feinstein also thanked the committee's chair, Senator Lindsey O. Graham, and then walked across the room to wrap him in a hug. Never mind the fact that neither senator was wearing a face mask, many Democrats were so much more incensed about what the hug symbolized, a final white flag. A compliment for Graham after a comparatively tame week of questioning, that hours later, at least 2 liberal activist groups called for Feinstein to go. And we see a lot of that too, and we're getting to a point that it's getting hard to reach across the aisle to work together. As I mentioned at the top of the topic, under any other circumstance, Barrett would have probably been a 93 vote confirmed judge to be a justice, because she's got a very good constitutionalist track record. A track record of hearing the facts of the case instead of putting her own bias into it. I don't even know if President Trump realizes that, but also keep in mind the fact that the last time a Roe versus Wade case got up to the Supreme Court, his poster child, Justice Kavanaugh, shot it down and said, nope, I don't even want to hear this case right now. So I think all of the panic that was over the Kavanaugh hearings was for nothing because of just that little fact, and I'm sure that might have stuck a little bit into the Donald's craw, but that was the hearings. It was a bit bizarre. There was a lot of stuff that went along with it. This country is getting to the point of fucked. As we see more and more of this come along, as we see more of these things happen, as we see more balkanization, a brilliant jurist that can't get more than a party line vote because people can't reach across the aisle, and then calling for resignations when one person does dare to come back and walk across the aisle. Let's see what the live chat's got to say off of this. I'm sure there's a lot of going on. Let's go back here. Wyatt says, do you need me to message John? No, I'm going to fly solo on this one for the night. and then we will reassess next week. I already knew that I was going to need a second co-host for next week, so I've already got some lines out there for that. So this one was just kind of unexpected. I'm still not sure what went on with that, but I will find out off camera. Let's see. Saint says, an update on the show. Unfortunately, the timeline for the show has been pushed back until next winter. Yes, our friend Saint is going out and looking at possibly creating a talk show of his own. Something very interesting to work with, and I actually know, I believe, who he's going to be working with for that, so that'd be definitely an interesting one to hear. The Deuce on the Loose says, what's your beef with Ilhan anyway? She called out AIPAC, as Dr. David Duke stated. She's the most important woman in Congress. So the biggest white supremacist in this country got on Ilhan Omar's side, and you don't see a problem with that? As Savannah Guthrie screams out, why won't you disavow white supremacy? Saint says, Islamic doctrine is irreconcilable with the Constitution. That is true, I think, but the other side of that is the Constitution also states that you can't ask a religious question to get into any sort of there can't be a religious prerequisite office, so you can't use that as your basis for not confirming somebody. There's got to be another basis for that if you don't want to confirm somebody, and I don't agree with that. I think that if a person is qualified and can be impartial, they should definitely sit up on the court, no matter who they pray to. Ron says we need to dissolve the Supreme Court and rebuild the judicial branch, along with the DOJ. Yeah, there's way too much. I mean, there doesn't need to be a DOJ on the federal level at this point. If a state needs to have a DOJ to keep themselves in line, then that's one thing. But there does not need to be a DOJ on the federal level. I'm sorry. You're absolutely right on that one, Ron. Saint says there's a lot of things we need to do, Ron. No one has the balls to admit it, let alone take action. Ron says members of the judicial branch should have somebody to sit in on congressional sessions and raise objections when they try to pass liberty-killing legislation. That's an idea. That's actually a good idea. Use one branch to keep the other ones in check. That's definitely something that should be brought up and legislated. That would be something that the Congress should be legislating, not directly legislating onto our lives. We should not, as Americans, have to suffer for years with bad news and spend thousands of dollars to repeal bad laws. Saint says Cocaine Mitch would never let that happen. Ron says nip those bad laws in the bud before they ever become laws. Saint says, Ron, old buddy, there are people on both sides of the aisle that will never let that happen. Any laws that Congress passes, they will have to go by as well. ACA, drug laws, drug testing, all of it. Yeah, get rid of all that shit. We don't need any of that, especially not on a federal level. Now, if Nebraska decides that they want to make it a crime for you to smoke a joint, that's between the government of Nebraska and the people of Nebraska, and people will flee Nebraska over that. But we don't need to have any of this at the federal level. Saint says, remember the cons are the ones who jammed the Patriot Act through, and that's clear constitutional violation. Fact check true. Yes, they need to suffer for that. Apparently, I don't understand how dark money influences politics. No, I understand, but it goes both ways. So, something to definitely keep in mind off that. And Senator Cruz got up right after White House, because that's how they go on their ranking on the Judiciary Committee, and pointed out the fact that there is much more money going left than going right now from large corporations. Thank you, Deuce. The Breakdown with Birkenhoff says, hi, Ron. Ron says, good. What the hell is good about that evil woman? Camel Toe was a running joke, which she was Willie's mistress. Oof. Getting spicy. I don't know how she passed the bar. Oh, wait, she passed it in Cali. I think they have lower standards. Well, yeah. All on Supreme Court decisions are susceptible to being overturned. That is true, but you still need to get a case to the top. That's one thing you have to remember. You need to get a case up there in order to get it overturned. You can't just go in and say, oh, well, I'm a judge and overturned. No, there actually has to be an appeal to it. where they make the decision and decide what's constitutional and what is not. And a good lawyer can come out and actually give us a good argument to see why this would be unconstitutional, which it definitely is. I mean, the supremacy clause in and of itself makes Roe versus Wade unconstitutional, along with a lot of other things that happen at the Supreme Court level. The supremacy clause by itself is the problem with a lot of these things that we see going on, and a lot of the illegal decisions made at the Supreme Court level. But yes, you are absolutely right. There are a lot of things that are susceptible to being overturned at the Supreme Court level because, just like the executive branch, an executive order can get flicked away at the flick of a pen. A judicial precedent can get flicked away at the right appeal. Actually, I had some more video on that too. Should I go back and talk about that? Because Klobuchar was talking about that. That awkward conversation between Klobuchar and Barrett over super precedent, where Klobuchar admitted that she wanted to be on the Supreme Court at one point, which I think that might have disqualified her for doing so. But let's jump back before we jump into the dueling town halls here and have a listen to that, because that actually is relevant to what we're talking about. Get that up here.
Through a few examples. So Brown v. Board of Education, as we know, that holds that the 14th Amendment prohibits states from segregating schools on the basis of race. So is that precedent?
Yes.
That can't be overruled?
Well, that is precedent. And as I think I said in that same article, it's super precedent. People consider it to be on that very small list of things that are so widely established and agreed upon by everyone. Calls for its overruling simply don't exist.
Okay. Well, you also separately acknowledged that in Planned Parenthood v. Casey, the Supreme Court's controlling opinion talked about the reliance interest on Roe v. Wade, which it treated in that case as super precedent. Is Roe a super precedent?
How would you define super precedent?
I might have thought someday I'd be sitting in that chair. I'm not. I'm up here, so I'm asking you.
Okay, well, people use super precedent differently.
Okay.
The way that it's used in the scholarship and the way that I was using it in the article that you're reading from was to define cases that are so well settled that no political actors and no people seriously push for their overruling. And I'm answering a lot of questions about Roe, which I think indicates that Roe doesn't fall in that category. And scholars across the spectrum say that doesn't mean that Roe should be overruled, but descriptively it does mean that it's not a case that everyone has accepted and doesn't call for its overruling.
Okay, so here's what's interesting to me. You said that Brown is, and I know my time is running out, is a super precedent. That's something the Supreme Court has not even said, but you have said that. So if you say that, why won't you say that about Roe v. Wade, a case that the court's controlling opinion in that Planned Parenthood v. Casey case has described as a super precedent? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, Senator, I can just give you the same answer that I just did. I'm using a term in that article that is from the scholarly literature. It's actually one that was developed by scholars who are, certainly not conservative scholars, who take a more progressive approach to the Constitution. And again, as Richard Fallon from Harvard said, Roe is not a super precedent because calls for its overruling have never ceased, but that doesn't mean that Roe should be overruled.
And that's right on the money, exactly where it needs to be when she said that. Brown versus the Board of Education, which is the one that Amy Klobuchar liked to bring up off of this, because there were reasons that she brought that one up, and there were reasons that she used that particular decision. And one of the things that goes along with that is, I don't think, aside from, as my friend the R-rated conservative calls them, any people other than a small fringe of cousin fuckers is going to dare to come up and try to bring Brown versus the Board of Education up for an appeal. And even if they did, they have a lot of circuit courts to get through that I also don't believe want to hear a challenge to Brown versus the Board of Education. I bet you there are challenges all the time that try to get appealed for Brown versus the Board of Education, because there are some sick people that live all over this country that would want to see that overturned. But the circuit court judges come out, they look at this, they see that it's a challenge to Brown versus the Board of Education, they look at it and say, dude, get the fuck out of here. But there are calls out there every day as well from a much larger portion of the country. I'm not going to say a majority, because I do think that a large majority of this country has accepted Roe versus Wade as accepted precedent, and they don't even want to try and get it up to the Supreme Court. But I'm sure that there are calls every day from a larger portion of the country to get up and get Roe versus Wade appealed. Once again, I don't even know what a Roe versus Wade appeal case would even look like. The only thing that I could think of is if it's an accidental pregnancy and the dad doesn't want the mom to go out and get the abortion. But even by that point, it has been so long, because it takes forever to get a case up to the Supreme Court. That's the only thing that I could think of as what a Roe versus Wade case would be. It's not just somebody comes up and goes to the Sixth Court of Appeals and says, I think Roe versus Wade is bad and I want to appeal it. No, there's actually got to be a case coming up for this. A suit, a lawsuit of some sort, parental rights or something, to get the case into the courts and get it appealed to that to get it appealed to that level. So that's what that is. All right, let's see if there's any more live chat here before we're gonna pop up in there. Nephilim Ninja is over here, says Super Saiyan President is even crazier. Hair turns yellow, you get really strong. I can't believe they're asking her about cartoons. I don't know what cartoons you're asking or talking about, unfortunately. I don't know what that one is. I'm sorry. I missed something, unfortunately. Sorry, Nephilim. All right. So that was the Amy Coney Barrett hearings. There were other awkward things that happened throughout the week. So earlier on in the week, just to get caught back up with everything that happened here, earlier on it was at the end of last week, the Biden camp announced that they were not going to go to the debate. The elections commissions and the debate commissions came out and said that the second debate was going to be virtual only, dealing with the president's contraction and subsequent beating of COVID-19. Now, as Trump said, and as I think he was in the right to say on this one, he agreed contractually to 3 in-person debates with the debate commission and nobody else. Elaine explained that to me, how that works, but he's not allowed to go to any other debate venue. He's not allowed to debate on any other venue whatsoever. He agreed to do all this, and then they changed the rules on him at the last minute. And you have no idea what's going to be happening with that, what Biden's going to be doing in his basement when he's locked away through there. I think that was the right decision on the Trump side. And I don't say that very often, because I voted for him in 2016, but my God, does he not ever piss me off more and more every day at this point. He does good stuff, he does bad stuff, but lately the bad stuff has been outweighing the good. But I do believe that was the right decision, because the debate commission was on breach of contract for that. And we don't know what kind of aides that they were going to have in the basement for Biden to try and make sure that he could answer everything correctly. So in light of this, Trump came out and said, I'm not going to go to the debate. I'm not going to do a virtual debate. I'm going to go out and have a rally instead. I'm going to talk to people that want to see me and want to talk to me. And at which point ABC reached out and offered a town hall on debate night to Joe Biden. Well, in an interesting twist of events with that, NBC came out and offered a town hall to President Trump on the same night, at the same time. And these were vastly different town halls. 2 very, very different things that were going along with this. Joe Biden sat down with George Stephanopoulos, a former Clinton staffer. I believe he was media director under the Clinton administration. I cannot confirm that right now. I would do that independently off the screen, but He sat down with George Stephanopoulos. They had a good conversation. Joe Biden actually did manage to get some decent content into there, including he did touch on how he felt about the court packing. The Trump town hall, however, was far different. Under the Trump town hall, you sat and saw Donald Trump sitting with Savannah Guthrie as she was combative and angry and calling him out. She did get him to come out and condemn white supremacy, but of course that disappeared out of the news almost immediately. He said it over and over again. Yes, I condemn white supremacy. I condemn it over and over again. Who do you want me to condemn? I condemn white supremacy. How many more times do I have to say it? And oddly enough, the conversation then switched to QAnon. CNN reports President Donald Trump doubled down on his refusal to denounce QAnon conspiracy theorists, saying in a nationally televised town hall Thursday night that they are very much against pedophilia, and he agrees with that sentiment. In a heated exchange, NBC News' Savannah Guthrie asked Trump if he could state the prevailing conspiracy devised by QAnon was not true. I know nothing about QAnon, Trump responded. I just told you, Trump fired back. What you tell me doesn't necessarily make it fact. QAnon's main conspiracy theories, none based in fact, claim dozens of Satan-worshipping politicians and A-list celebrities work in tandem with governments around the globe to engage in child sex abuse. Followers also believe there's a deep state effort to annihilate Trump, and the president is secretly working to bust these pedophilic cabals. Now, given the fact that he doesn't know anything about this, makes me believe that he's not in support of them. He doesn't actually know what's going on, because if we can say one thing about our president, he definitely does tweet off his sleeve. And we're usually pretty quick to know what it is that he has to think, whether we want to or not. So I definitely buy the fact that he has no idea what's going on with QAnon. Of course, they are big fans of him, and they do believe that there's some Q in the White House staff somewhere that is leaking these documents out to the people. This wasn't the only thing, of course. Guthrie was also combative against Trump over his taxes, his tax returns, the money that he owed out to people. The listeners were barely able to get any sort of word in edgewise to come up and ask the current sitting president any sort of questions, in spite of the fact that that was supposed to be the focus of the town hall. A full 6 minutes into the town hall before any person was able to get up and ask a question, and if somebody did get up to ask a question, Guthrie would immediately counter back to try and trap the president. But there was something else going on with this, and I noticed this as we went along. And I'll talk a bit about what happened under the Biden town hall in just a minute. But one of the things that got weird to me was the fact that, as I mentioned, these were happening at the same night, at the same time. You would think, especially if there was massive support for Biden, that they would have wanted to move, with NBC being the ones that were hosting the town hall, that they would want to move this town hall to a point where everybody could come out and see Biden and see everything that he had to say coming out of this. But this is just conspiratorial at this point. This is tinfoil for me to come out and say, but it does almost to me seem like they were looking at this and trying to find a way to keep President Trump on the stage and keep people from looking at Vice President Biden. That was one of the things that I noticed while this. And it's not really hard to convince President Trump to get up on TV. He's an egomaniac. We all know it. Those of us who voted for him, those of us who hate him, those of us who didn't vote for him but like what he's doing. We all know it. He's an egomaniac. It is not hard for NBC to get up there and say, hey, Mr. Trump, you want to get up and do a town hall at the same time as Biden is? I bet you're going to get so much better ratings than Biden is. At that point, it doesn't matter what Biden says, because everybody's going to be out there glued to the Trump town hall. Every patriot out there with MAGA in their Twitter handle is going to be glued to the town hall because it's the president. He's our guy. He's our messiah. He's going to save us all. We got to watch this. We got to hear what the next thing he's going to say is. And of course, all of his detractors, all the people that hate him, are going to be doing the same thing, eyes glued to the TV, but saying a very, very different tune. They're going to be up there saying, Oh my God, he's going to say something racist. Wait till he says something racist. He's going to say something racist. I'm going to be the first person to tweet that he said something racist. I'm going to get Twitter famous because I tweeted that he said something racist. I got to see it. I got to see it. I got to see it. And meanwhile, nobody sits down and watches the majority of the Joe Biden town hall live. And then everything that you see comes from heavily edited clips that are shared out through social media instead of sitting down and watching the whole thing. And Biden did get a few things going against him. One of the things I did want to point out about this, and we're going to go back to the Trump town hall in just a second, but there was a vast difference between these two town halls. And it was easily on display with the chairs that they were sitting in. This side-by-side that I pulled up earlier shows Trump sitting on a tall stool, narrow seat, metal stool, sitting up there. And I mean, Guthrie was sitting on the same kind of stool, but I mean, this seems like a very, very uncomfortable situation. Meanwhile, you see over on the left there, you see Biden sitting down in a comfortable, easy chair, sitting facing towards Stephanopoulos, who is off camera at this point, but just kind of casually sitting there facing and having a casual conversation with George Stephanopoulos. There was very, very little pushback against former Vice President Joe Biden, as most people would expect coming up from something like this. I mean, we've come to the point where we sit and expect the mainstream media to have a little bit of a bias towards the left. We're seeing this now coming up with the third debate. And even the second debate, Steve Scully tweeting out his unfortunate tweet to Anthony Scaramucci that really set a lot of this in motion. And Steve Scully being an intern for Joe Biden back in the 70s. And then now the moderator for the third debate, whose name escapes me at this moment, also has deep ties with the Democrat Party, including the fact that her parents have donated excessively to the Democratic Party, which, I mean, once again, it's something that you come to expect from the mainstream media. It's what they do. But there was another case of somebody getting up who was supposed to be an undecided voter, possibly a registered Democrat, and this kind of lets some people off as well. Let's see. It's this one here. Let me grab clip number 3. This undecided voter gave up and decided that she needed to give Trump an interesting compliment. Let's hear what that sounded like.
Evening, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
I have to say, you have a great smile.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, he does. You're so handsome when you smile. Evening, Mr. President.
I don't know about that, but of course, that got all kinds of people, all kinds of heated and wrapped up, and all kinds of fun ensued off of that. But that was that. And over on the Biden side, let me grab an article quick that I want to read from just a sec. Sorry, usually I'm doing this while Elaine is reading live chat here, and the fact that she didn't pop up put a little bit this into a tailspin. This one, let me grab this one too quick, because these will go right in lockstep and tandem with each other. All right, so from the Daily Wire, they reported Biden appears to tip his hand during town hall on whether he's open to packing the Supreme Court. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden appeared to tip his hand during last night's ABC News presidential town hall on whether he will pack the Supreme Court if elected, suggesting that he's open to the idea depending on the outcome of Supreme Court confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett. And that's been something that's been discussed throughout the week going along with the hearings for Amy Coney Barrett was if she were to get confirmed, then we are going to start to see retaliatory action coming from the Democrats. Should they win the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives, changing the law, ending the filibuster so that they can change the law, increasing the number of justices from 9 to either 11 or 13, and shifting the balance of the court back into a different direction. It does seem like they would be sticking to 13 instead of 9 to bring it back to a nice 7-6 majority in their favor. But once again, he's kind of talking about it and kind of saying yes whether or not he's going to do it, but he's not getting on record and being definitive about it. He is still trying to sly away from it, because if he says, yes, I'll pack the Supreme Court, that is alienating to the union base and the moderate base that he needs to win. And if he says no, then the progressive wing is going to leave him behind in the dust. So it's an interesting conundrum that Joe Biden finds himself in with this. And honestly, I think they're going to do it. If for whatever reason they get back into power, I do believe that that's what they're going to do, is to go back and try and pack up the court to get it back into the situation that they want it to be in. The other interesting one that came from this was Biden was called to account for something that he said on Charlemagne the God show.
Today, correspondent Peter Ducey has details tonight.
Go away. I don't want autoplay off of this. Biden was pressed on the "you ain't black" comment during a town hall. This one came to me from over on Fox News. An undecided African-American voter took a veiled swipe at Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden Thursday night, asking the former vice president to give him an answer besides "you ain't black" for why young black voters should support him in the 2020 election. Cedric Humphrey asked the former vice president during a town hall hosted by ABC News' George Stephanopoulos Thursday night to address young black voters. Besides "you ain't black," what do you have to say to young black voters who are seeing who see voting for you as further participation in a system that continually fails to protect them, Humphrey said. Humphrey was referring back to Biden's comments earlier this year during an interview with radio star Charlemagne the God. Biden Thursday night responded to Humphrey by quoting the late Representative John Lewis, saying, "It's a sacred opportunity to right the vote. You can make a difference. If young black women and men vote, you can determine the outcome of this election," Biden said. "That's not a joke. You can do that." The former vice president, in an attempt to tout his record and highlight how he has demonstrated, "I care about my whole career," went on to discuss a fair, more decent criminal justice system and education, but then discuss black Americans and their position to gain wealth and generate wealth. Biden spoke about early education and Title I schools, which he said he has increased funding for. So, unfortunately, looking at Biden, and I mean, it's baked into the cake, you know it's coming. But looking at Biden, you look back up and you see somebody who is going to increase the size of the government. Never minding the fact that that's also what Trump did, was increase the size of the federal government. Increase the federal government to come out and try to protect the people that would vote for him. And try to, unfortunately, buy votes instead of actually giving any sort of possible policy prescription of pulling back some of the federal government and letting the people breathe. That was, I mean, to listen to Savannah Guthrie and Trump go back and forth with each other was, it was quite entertaining, and I yelled out at the president numerous times through that because, trust me, as bad as he was going, and a lot of the blaming that he did, because that's what Trump does, he likes to blame game. I don't want Joe Biden as president. My God, if Joe Biden becomes president, the golden microphone, I think, goes away. I think that channel gets shut down, alt tech gets shut down, and YouTube becomes cable TV on the internet, is what I see coming up out of some of these platforms. And I could be wrong. I mean, Congress could stifle them, but if people are going to vote for Biden, I think that they're going to vote that way in Congress too. Don't get me wrong on that, but Trump did not do well in that town hall. He's got to have a stellar performance in the debate. And given everything else that's popping up for him right now, with the taxes and people trying to come out and say that he's compromised and he owes this kind of money. And that was something else that Guthrie brought up in this too, is what kind of money that he owes out to foreign governments. I mean, the guy's a businessman. He borrows money. I've never seen a business that is operating completely in the black at any time. You take out the business loan and you do what you need to do with it. I'm sure there are some out there. I've not seen one, especially not a small business, but of course Trump is not a small business person either. He's one of the biggest magnates out there. But it was definitely two different town halls. There were definitely two different atmospheres, and two different messages that were trying to be conveyed off each other on two different networks at the same time. All right. Let's have a look at the live chat here, see what you guys are saying here. And then I got just a couple more things to talk about. And then we'll head on out of here. Looks like we'll probably get out of here just a little bit early tonight. Let's see. Where do we leave off? We left off with Ron putting up the hens. MLL Light says taxation is theft. Nephilim said Super Saiyan President. We read those ones. He says, sorry, bad joke. Ron Helton says, Biden says he'll trust the scientists. What a dumbass. Yeah, Ron and I were going back and forth on that on Twitter a little bit earlier, talking about the food pyramid and the fact that that is nothing but starches and breads and grains at the bottom. And, you know, all your new age dieters at this point are coming out and saying the easiest way to do it is just to not eat carbs. Which, I mean, I can kind of attest to because it's actually working for me right now. 40 pounds. So I can't come out and say a lot of negative things about going low carb, but even still, that is what the science said for years, and now we trust the scientists with everything. Nephilim says Dragon Ball Z. No, I get it. Don't worry, you're the adult talking about politics. I'm making dumbass cartoon jokes. Oh, I got it. I knew what you were talking about. Let's see. Ron says the debate commission is ridiculous as believing the BBB is a legitimate regulatory agency for businesses. It is a private company. They shake down business owners. Yeah, and I've seen some of that too. I've dealt with the Better Business Bureau before. Now, the company that I was dealing with, the BBB, before with, actually was a fly-by-night company, and they sent me a bad product. But I also know that people can pay to up their ratings on the Better Business Bureau. It's not a secret. Ron says Trump debated twice already. Biden and the moderator. That is two. Joe, what's your favorite ice cream? Yeah, I do have that video up here. When we talk about the Hunter Biden thing, he was standing outside a convenience store, I think, or a fast food place, and they were asking him about ice cream. I do have that one queued up. Ron says, Trump, if Peter Pepper picked a pickle full of peppers, how many peppers did Peter Pepper pick? And can you convert that to hexadecimal? Okay, I see what you're doing with that. Spartan says, I only support less government because there are no geniuses in office. And then Ron says the answer is 8 peck of pickles. All right. That is going to be what we have for the chat break. Thanks, you guys, for coming and hanging out for that part. I got just a couple more stories to do, and then we will head on out of here. So, this week marked another successful rally campaign, especially coming up into my neck of the woods. So, WKOW 27 reported on the Rock County rally that Trump put out here. Trump holds Janesville rally as Rock County COVID-19 cases surge. They're not surging. That's my secret to you. They're not surging. I live here, I know. But let's see what KOW has to say here. Thousands lined up to go to President Trump's rally Saturday evening in Janesville, but many disregarded COVID-19 precautions. At the same time, cases are spiking in the area. Though staff were handing out masks and supporters had to wear one in order to ride the buses that shuttled people between parking and the rally site, many Trump supporters didn't wear masks and almost no one maintained physical distancing. Bill Atkins drove up from Illinois to attend the rally. He said he doesn't think the virus poses a real threat, and he is less concerned after Trump got sick. That's going to be a theme, I think, for the rest of the election cycle, is people saw that Trump got sick, recovered, and came back out with it, and there's really no risk anymore. Now, Trump is the person who's going to be at the major risk factor for this. That is true, and that's definitely something that we need to consider and talk about with that. But, you know, he beat the thing. This isn't the immediate death sentence that everybody said that it was going to be, either. I mean, it's not like you get the positive diagnosis and then you hear the phone ring next to you and you hear 7 days on the other end. It's not like that anymore. So that's what people are going to say. And, I mean, this is a Madison TV station, so Dane County is going to be that place that does everything they can to try to detract from the president. I actually went down to try and see what it looked like at the rally, and there were people there. I mean, there were. In order to get close to this thing, and I was looking up to get to this, it was a minimum of $50 donation to get in. But there were tickets that were upwards of $1,000 to get in and see this. At the airport. At a small municipal airport. In a small Wisconsin county outside the city. $1,000 to get in and see the president speak, because that's how many people wanted to go there. And we saw other rallies. We saw Biden out earlier on this week in Arizona with almost nobody there. He was in Pennsylvania speaking to an empty room. Meanwhile, Trump is at an airport in a nondescript town in Wisconsin. A small city. What is it, like 60,000 people in Janesville? And thousands of people coming to show up and try to get in there, to the point that they had to block traffic off 7 miles from where he was going to be speaking. I went down there to go back and try and just drive by the airport after work on Saturday. And you could not get within 7 miles of the airport that day. It was nuts. And then, of course, he went out into Nevada to rally again. And the Hill got up and got all pissy because he made an offering in church while he was sitting in church, and it appeared to only be $40. So there was that. The rally schedule's underway. Trump is going out and doing 2 or 3 of these out a day, traveling around the country. He left out of Janesville immediately and headed out to the West Coast, out to Nevada. Biden is getting out and doing these things. He's getting up out of his basement and doing these things. It's time. We're getting down to the crunch time. Trump wants to get out there and talk to his people. Biden is reluctantly getting out there and talking to his people. The news outlets are screaming COVID left and right. And if you can get in to see the guy, go see him. I'm sure it'll be an experience. All right. The Hunter email thing, however, was a completely different story throughout the week. I want to see if I can grab some news on this one here. I don't have that one brought up either. Bear with me for just a moment. See if I can grab something here to read to you guys from. But, I mean, this is still a moving target off of this one. So on Thursday morning, the New York Post released an article showing that a computer repairman in Delaware got a laptop for water damage to repaired it. It was never picked back up. It stayed there long enough for the computer shop to take ownership of it. The owner went through, looked through the hard drive, realized it was Hunter Biden's, made a copy of the hard drive because he's a sort of conspiracy theorist from what I understand. Sent the laptop out to the FBI after hearing no word or seeing nothing break about this. Sent a copy of the hard drive that he had made to Rudy Giuliani, who leaked it to the New York Post, who leaked it out to the rest of the world. And then the New York Post got shut down on all major social media platforms. Now, the first thing that we heard on Friday morning when we started hearing about this was the fact that suddenly the New York Post, which is one of the oldest circulations in this country, by the way, I believe it was started by Alexander Hamilton. Don't quote me on that. But this is one of the oldest publications and one of the most reputable publications in the country right now. Yes, it has a right-leaning bent. Every newspaper has a bias at this point. But it is one of the oldest and most reputable publications that's been in this country. And then we had people on Twitter calling it the National Enquirer of news, and it had no credibility whatsoever. Now Twitter then came out and suppressed the story, got rid of it. They are still, as of right now, as far as I know, the New York Post official Twitter handle is suspended until they delete the article. The article showed not only pictures of Hunter Biden with a crack pipe hanging out of his mouth. Let me get that up here for you guys. There we go. Hunter Biden with the crack pipe in his mouth. It not only shows that picture, but it also shows email correspondence, including an email thread where Hunter Biden was talking with his father about working at Burisma, something that Joe Biden has vehemently denied that he ever did. Joe Biden has come out on record on numerous occasions and said that, no, I never talked to my son about Burisma. I don't know anything that's going on with that. Now, there are a lot of problems that go along with this as well, and the ownership of this and Giuliani coming off of this. Giuliani is going to be a biased actor, and that's going to be something that we are going to have to deal with as we go with this story. But this is damning. And if everything in this article is true, which, once again, innocent until proven guilty by a jury of your peers. But if everything in this article is true, then that actually may be disqualifying for Joe Biden holding the office 2 weeks before an election. There's a lot of stuff going on with this. There's a lot of stuff that we still need to come out and see with this. But, I mean, a lot of people are coming out and saying that Joe Biden had nothing to do with the prosecutor getting fired in the Ukraine. Joe Biden said, I came out and I told them that you're not going to get this money unless you fire that guy. And if I leave here and he's not fired, you're not going to get the money. And the next day, son of a bitch, he got fired. That is on record. He went out. He's on record on bragging about this, and people are still trying to come out and say that it never happened. And the story just keeps getting weirder and weirder. Now, Giuliani and the New York Post are both being investigated, or alleged rather. They're not being investigated, but they're being alleged by the left as being Russian propaganda, and this whole story being nothing but a Russian propaganda piece, which I find interesting. Anything that I don't like is Russian propaganda is what we're seeing off of this. And now Republicans in Congress are calling on the Justice Department to have an independent probe into everything that happened with this email story. Both getting up to, the laptop getting passed off to Giuliani needs to get probed, and then everything that's in the laptop. They're trying to open a probe into this. So they're going to have yet another investigation into a presidential candidate. The investigations are never going to stop at this point, but it might be good at this point because we're seeing a lot of corruption up at the top on both sides from everybody. All right. I think I've just got one more left here for you guys. I think. One or two. I do. I've got one more left. And that is the surprise stupidity for the day. And this is breaking within a couple hours ago. I found out about this. When I sat down to start doing the video prep for this show, the video and the visual aids for this show, is when I found out about this. So the surprise stupidity for the day comes to us from Vice. New Yorker suspends Jeffrey Toobin for masturbating on a Zoom call. This is from Laura Wagner. The New Yorker has suspended the reporter Jeffrey Toobin for masturbating on a Zoom video chat between members of the New Yorker and WNYC Radio last week. Toobin says he did not realize his video was on. I made an embarrassingly stupid mistake believing I was off camera. I apologize to my wife, family, friends, and coworkers, Toobin told Motherboard. I believed I was not visible on Zoom. I thought no one on the Zoom call could see me. I thought I had muted the Zoom video, he added. Two people who were on the call told Vice separately that the call was an election simulation featuring many of the New Yorker's biggest stars. Jane Mayer was playing establishment Republicans. Evan Osnos was Joe Biden. Jelani Cobb was establishment Democrats. Masha Gessen played Donald Trump. Andrew Morantz was the far right. Sue Halpern was the left-wing Democrats. Dexter Filkins was the military. And Jeffrey Toobin playing the courts. There were also a handful of other producers on the call from the New Yorker and WNYC. I gotta find out about this. How old is Toobin? He looks old. Unfortunately, I'm going to see a wall of articles for this before I get into anything. Can I get his wiki? Okay. Born May 21st, 1960. Holy shit, that guy's got the same birthday as my mom. Exactly the same birthday. That's an interesting way to find that out. Something I never really wanted to know, but that's an interesting way to find that out. So, dude is 60 years old on a Zoom call and decides he just needs to whip it out and beat it on a Zoom call. I get on a Zoom call every week, sometimes multiple. I've never been on I have been on a big mass Zoom call because we did the 9-person conversation going on in the generational gap when they did their last charity stream. But I have never been so horny that I felt the need to beat it on a Zoom call. I've never, have you? Have you ever been that? At 60 years old, too, on top of all this. I can't wrap my head around this. I kind of wish Elaine was here because I kind of wanted to spring this one on her too, but I can't find any situation where this would be what you would want to do. How is this the appropriate moment to do this? Somebody explain this to me. We're going to go much more into depth in this in the morning. And I'm going to read much deeper into the article for this because there's got to be more to this story. There's got to be. But this, like I said, was breaking right before I started doing video prep for the show. But I can't understand that. All right, that's going to be the news. Let's check in with the live chat one more time here, and we'll head on out of here. And then I will sit and figure out who is going to be my guest host for next week. I hope that I get an email back. I don't want to say the name just yet in lieu of jinxing it, but hopefully I'll have an email back and I'll have a confirmation on that. That would be really cool, and I think that would be good for the channel. It's somebody I think you guys would like. Somebody I think you guys are really familiar with, but we will see. All right. We left off on Ron Helton's tongue twister here. Can you convert that into hexadecimal? Let's see. Ron Helton says, did you know that the color orange angers some people? Now we know where the orange man bad comes from. Nice. Ron says, the New York Post has not posted anything in 5 days. Is that them or Twitter? That is Twitter because they actually the article that I read at the top where the guy was dangling off the side of Trump Tower in Chicago came from the New York Post. That happened yesterday. So the New York Post is up and running and good, but they're not posting anything onto Twitter because they are suspended. Let's see. You can still see their old posts, just nothing new in 5 days has been posted. Yeah, they're locked out of their account. Ron says the director of the DNI says that it is not Russian disinfo. Now watch the left attack him. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're going to attack anybody because this is... You should not be holding public office if this is actually what happened. There is no way in hell that Joe Biden should be holding public office at this point. If everything on this is true. Now, once again, innocent until proven guilty, right to be judged by 12 of your peers. I cede that to the guy because that is in the Bill of Rights. That is in the Constitution. You don't get tried in the court of public opinion. You get tried in the court by 12 of your peers. But it is corrupt if it is true. Let's see. Spartan says, if a powerful genius comes along and told humanity what should be done, they would stone him to death, even in the most modern country. And then Ron's got the towel sticker out there because that's how Ron wants to get stoned to death. That's also how I want to get stoned to death, by the way. Spartan says, that's why I have tape over my cam and I connect a cam when I use it. Yeah, I don't have tape over my cam because I use it every single day. And we've got more stickers coming up here. We've got some DLive stuff here that I can't see on the restream, but I just pulled up the DLive. Oh, thanks for the ice cream, by the way, Alpha Man. I just saw that too because I pulled that up on the monitor here. I want to see what you put up here. It says Ron Helton, heart my dog. That's what I see here. Okay. Saint says my mother was born in 1960 as well. Cool. That's awesome. Elephant Man's got the stickers out here, and I think that is where we're going to call it out here. Thanks everybody who came by and checked us out. So, a little bit early. What are we at? We're not even quite to 2 hours yet, which that's good. I do wish I'd had a guest over there, but everything happening up at the very last second put a damper on that. And if I'd have known an hour ago even, I probably could have pulled somebody up off of this here. But we will be back here next week with a guest because we already have it planned that Elena was going to be out for next week and the following week because it is the campaign season, and I'm sure that that's actually what happened with her as well this week. So we'll figure that out. I'll figure that out off camera, and we will go from there. So thanks for hanging out. Let's get some outro music up here, and let's get going. No, that's not outro music. This is outro music. There it is. All right, thanks everybody who came by and hung out tonight. Ron Helton, Saint, some new followers over on Twitch, some new names that I haven't seen before, some of them detractors, but that's okay. Detractors can come in too. You are free to speak however you want to speak, and that's just how that goes. And if I can answer your question, I'll answer your question. If I can't, then I can't. That's what it is. But thanks once again, and thanks for the ice cream once again, Elephant Man. I will be back here in the morning for more contemporary. Come and check me out there. We will be back here on the show next week for more Red and Ed show. So look for us there with a special guest. If you're just catching up live, you want to catch us back, we will be on YouTube as soon as it processes, and we will auto-upload to bitshoot.com. So go over there and check us out on both of those platforms. We look forward to seeing you and look forward to you seeing the rest of the show. I know I've got some of you out there that like to consume the show that way as well. Or if you'd rather take us on the go on the audio platforms, we are available on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify, which I will get caught up with this week. Once again, I'm falling behind once again on that, and that is all on me, but I know that a lot of you guys like to take that as well. I hit 1,000 downloads over on Podbean, the one that hosts me out to all the places, so it is encouraging for me to get back out and get back up there. So come and hang out with us. The Red and Ed Show is what it's titled on all the platforms, and if you're on iTunes, leave us that 5-star rating and a good review. That always helps us move up the charts, helps us overcome Apple's algorithms. And lastly, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Take care, everybody. Have a good night, and we will see you either in the morning or next week.